Hello, this is Eastern Europe Review, a joint production of BELSAT and TPP World with reports and analysis from Ukraine, Belarus and Russia. I'm Alexandra Shapalina and these are the main stories. Why was the Russian deputy defense minister arrested?
This is an intra-elite conspiracy.
How do the European trucks reach Russia despite sanctions?
Сам Європейський Союз і конкретні держави.
Both the European Union and individual states are conducting investigations into the circumvention of sanctions.
Ukrainian volunteers retrieve bodies and remains of dead soldiers from the front lines.
A man's life is like that. We don't divide the dead into foes and our kind.
Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu has removed his arrested deputy Timur Ivanov from his post. Previously, the court had remanded the official to a pre-trial detention center for 2 months. Officially, he is suspected of receiving a significantly large bribe. However, independent media sources suggest that the case may be far more serious, potentially involving treason.
On Wednesday, news broke that Timur Ivanov, deputy to Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu and reportedly the wealthiest official in the Ministry of Defense, according to Forbes, had been arrested. Unique footage emerged. One of the highest-ranking individuals in Russia, dressed in a general's uniform, standing in a courtroom cell. Reports indicate that Ivanov was apprehended directly from his workplace. The day before his arrest, Ivanov had participated in a meeting of the board of the Ministry of Defense.
He is highly competent. The deputy minister holds level 1 security clearance. This is a person who was allowed to build submarine bases, spaceports, missile silos and related infrastructure. It is evident that such a valuable person will be warmly welcomed in the West.
Officially, Shoigu's deputy is suspected of receiving a large bribe. However, independent Russia media sources suggest that the real accusations revolve around treason.
Ivanov's operational development was overseen by the military counterintelligence department. It is not typical for this department to deal with corruption issues.
Ivanov is described as one of the most pro-Western officials in Russia, viewed as a technocrat aligned with a more moderate faction rather than the aggressive pro-military bloc.
I don't rule out that Ivanov, being an intelligent and smart person, who understands the situation at the front like no one else, who realizes in general what he had got himself into, and realizing that his path to villas in Saint-Tropez, to Rolls-Royces and Bentleys, which he loved to drive in along the Côte d'Azur, was thinking about fleeing this war to warmer countries.
Over the past 5 years, Timur Ivanov has been the subject of numerous journalistic investigations. Associates of Navalny have exposed details of the luxurious lifestyle led by the Deputy Minister of Defense. Ivanov appears to have indulged in lavish social events, holidays in Europe, and the ownership of exquisite yachts, cars and jewelry. However, corruption within the Russian government hardly comes as a surprise.
This is an intra-elite conspiracy. Of course, this has nothing to do with the fight against corruption. The arrest was made for a reason. Putin's inauguration on May the 7th will be followed by the resignation of the government and the appointment of a new cabinet. And so here, possible behind-the-scenes power plays have begun between the FSB and the Ministry of Defense.
Journalists report that it was Sergei Shoigu who facilitated Timur Ivanov's rise over a decade ago when they worked together in the Moscow region government. During his tenure at the Ministry of Defense, Ivanov was responsible for military procurement, construction and major facility repairs, including projects in occupied Mariupol. Some speculate that Ivanov may have become a collateral victim in an attack aimed at Sergei Shoigu.
The fact that there was such a Timur Ivanov, Shoigu's wallet, is no secret to anyone in Russia. Ivanov moved along with him from one position to another. It was obvious and clear what exactly he was doing there.
Ivanov is also known to be close with Dmitry Peskov, Putin's press secretary, with whom he has celebrated holidays together. Here are their well-known photos from a banquet, where Ivanov is seen carefully concealing his friend's expensive watch from the cameras. Despite this closeness, the Kremlin representative has offered only a distant comment on Ivanov's arrest.
Of course, there are now a lot of different rumours around all this. Here, of course, you need to rely on official information. What's more, there will be an investigation.
Whether Timur Ivanov's arrest will stand alone as an act of intimidation, or if it signals a broader crackdown on the moderate bloc of officials who prefer vacationing in Saint-Tropez over waging war, remains to be seen.
European Union tractors enter Russia circumventing Western sanctions following the same method previously used to sell luxury cars to Russia. A team of Belarusian investigative journalists uncovered evidence suggesting that Belarusian intermediary companies delivered European brand tractors worth $60 million to Russia last year.
New tractors from brands like Mercedes-Benz, Volvo, DAF, and others are being transported in large numbers from European countries to Belarus with the intention of reaching the Russian market. As revealed by the Belarusian investigative project Bureau Media, intermediary companies are involved in criminal activities. This is because, due to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the European Union has prohibited the sale of its heavy vehicles to Russia and Belarus.
A European tractor is registered for sale, for example to Kazakhstan, which is not under European sanctions. The vehicle crosses the Polish-Belarusian or Lithuanian-Belarusian border, and then the cargo is redirected to a customer in Russia instead of Kazakhstan.
According to investigators, Belarusian companies are involved in the illegal transportation of trucks from the European Union to Russia. Journalists from Bureau Media have identified the leaders in this market as Autobuy Leasing, NMP Logistics, and Belshyn-Torg Service. The beneficiary of the latter, Vladimir Sherzanovich, does not consider such deliveries to be a circumvention of sanctions.
We don't work with the European Union. We work within the Eurasian Economic Union, where these machines move freely. There are no restrictions, and who the hell knows how they got there?
According to Bureau Media, Belarusian intermediary companies delivered over 600 trucks from Belarus to Russia last year, with a total value of at least $60 million. The investigators didn't find any direct connection between these companies and the Lukashenko regime. These are all private companies that significantly increased their revenue and net profits last year. The information was obtained through data from Russian customs.
Based on these customs data, we can see which companies exported European trucks from Belarus to Russia in which volumes. We also checked the VIN codes of some trucks, and it turned out that before reaching Russia, these trucks were in Lithuania, and from Lithuania, they seem to have been exported to Kazakhstan.
Earlier, investigative journalists from Bureau Media uncovered a similar scheme of circumventing sanctions that Belarusian and Russian companies used to export luxury cars from the European Union. Alongside Pavel Latushka, the head of National Anti-Crisis Management, they shared this information with EU sanctions envoy David O'Sullivan. 3 months later, Lithuania and Poland started intercepting luxury cars at the border with Belarus and subjecting them to additional inspections.
Сам Європейський Союз і конкретні держави.
Both the European Union and individual states are conducting investigations into the circumvention of sanctions, looking for loopholes that enable such evasion. And we, the NAU and other initiatives of the democratic forces of Belarus, present relevant information and evidence which serve as the basis for national and European decisions.
On April the 12th, the European Union introduced criminal liability for the circumvention of sanctions. Throughout this year, EU member countries are required to integrate this decision into their national legislation. In the near future, the European Union will consider imposing additional economic sanctions against the regime in Minsk.
The Ukrainian volunteer search team has found more than 1,500 bodies during Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine. All deceased Russian military personnel that have been found were handed over to the appropriate Ukrainian state service for exchange.
They're searching for those who lost their lives in the Russian-Ukrainian war. They're exhuming and collecting bodies from trenches once occupied by Russian and Ukrainian military positions, now covered with soil.
Put it here. I'll pack it up now.
And the entire process is taking place under intense fire.
Quiet. Get down. Let's get out of here.
The volunteers say that their main objective is to locate the bodies and provide solace to the spirits of the fallen soldiers.
Look how many bodies there are here. So many souls.
We met the volunteers after the group's overnight trip to the Klishchivka and Ivanovsky area in the direction of Bakhmut. They were unloading black bags from a refrigerated lorry and sorting them into different groups.
Those have already been inspected. They will be handed over, and these have just come in.
Alexei opens a newly delivered bags while his assistant places the barrier tape. The volunteers are preparing for the first examination, marking the location where each body was found on a board and assigning a serial number to each deceased individual. During the examination, they discover a military badge.
It's probably Wagner. There's a difference. First come the letters, then there are numbers. It's Wagner, probably.
Every Russian military officer has one, says Alexei. Their personal number encrypts information about its owner. Volunteers do not reveal part of the number on the badge. It is confidential information. According to available data, this Russian soldier was killed in action near Bakhmut more than a year ago.
He was injured on the left side of his body, and his left arm was severed. There wasn't much chance of him helping himself. Most likely there is also damage to internal organs. This could be the spring or winter of last year. Quite a few bodies of Russian soldiers were left at the positions.
The serial number 681 represents this deceased soldier in the Platzdarm lists, which indicate the number of Russian soldiers the volunteers have found and removed from abandoned positions during the full-scale war. The number is accompanied by a portable shroud with measurement tape markings showing the remains of another Russian soldier, initially collected in a bag from a piece of burnt-out equipment.
These are burnt remains removed from vehicles, tanks or armoured personnel carriers. This is what they look like. You can't get DNA from them. However, the remaining vehicle number or badge can identify the person.
Alexei picks out the skeletal remains from the pile of ashes, stones, and burnt-out iron fragments, arranging them on the shroud. Another number, 682, appears on the list.
A man's life is like that. We don't divide the dead into foes and our kind. We don't do that. That's what makes us different from non-humans. We want to take everybody and pass on the bodies. If we were allowed to work in there, that is Russian territory, and they saw us doing this, I think the war would end quickly.
Alexei has been searching for fallen soldiers for 25 years. He says that during Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine, his team found more than 1,500 bodies from both sides and handed them over to the authorities. He says he would like to see also Russian volunteers searching for the dead, but believes this is unlikely to happen in Russia.
To be honest, I don't know if there are similar search parties on the other side. I think ordinary people are not allowed to search for the dead. This information is confidential, and any leaks could harm Russia itself.
After being inspected and inventorized by volunteers, the bodies and remains are taken to the mortuary, where they will remain until the next exchange.
That's all for today. Thank you for watching Eastern Europe Review. We will be back next week with new stories. I'm Alexandra Shapalina. Keep watching TVP World and see you next time.